If you were going to make a quarterback in a lab, Cam Newton is the prototype. 6'5", 250 pounds of chiseled marble with amazing athleticism and a rocket arm. Cam wore many hats throughout his career, both literally and figuratively. First, he was a backup to Heisman-winning quarterback Tim Tebow at Florida. Then he became a Heisman Trophy winner himself at Auburn, where he also won a national championship. Then went first overall in the 2011 draft to the Carolina Panthers, won Rookie of the Year, and then several years later won NFL MVP and made a Super Bowl. But then injuries struck and he eventually got cut before resurfacing and taking on the unenviable task of being the first quarterback to follow up Tom Brady in New England. After one lackluster season in New England, he was cut in the 2021 preseason in favor of first-round rookie quarterback and notorious safe driver Mac Jones. He would reunite with Carolina again for one more run in 2021, but was a shell of himself and was not re-signed after the season was over. Now, in 2023, Cam Newton is likely done as an NFL player. What made him so impactful, his physicality and toughness, is also a large reason why his career was so short. So how should Cam be remembered? As one of the most dominant dual-threat quarterbacks ever, or as a guy who put up mediocre passing numbers with an average career win-loss record? This video looks to answer those questions. Enjoy. 2011. Key stat: Cam had an impressive 95.6 passer rating in the first half of games, but only a 73.5 passer rating in the second half of games. Cam's first task in the NFL was to turn a 2-14 team with the worst offense in the league into a respectable franchise again. With the whole world watching, and many hoping to see him fail, Cam put up one of the best rookie seasons ever. He accounted for 35 touchdowns total, 21 through the air, and 14 on the ground, setting a new NFL record for rushing touchdowns in a season by a quarterback. He did commit 19 turnovers, but Carolina still finished with a top 5 offense, an absolutely remarkable turnaround from the year before. However, despite Cam's production and a top offense, the team went 2-8 over their first 10 games before finishing 6-10. The largest culprit was Carolina's horrific defense, which finished 31st in points allowed per drive. The defense gave up over 30 points 6 times, and their special teams allowed 3 punt return touchdowns as well. But despite Carolina's porous defense, the truth is the Panthers blew many close games, as they had the ball down 1 score in the fourth quarter in 8 of their 10 losses. Let's examine those losses. Week 1 at Arizona. Cam's NFL debut was an exciting back-and-forth contest. He threw for 422 yards and accounted for 3 touchdowns, giving Carolina a 21-14 lead entering the fourth, but he couldn't produce any points on 4 drives in the final stanza, punting it up 21-14. Arizona then tied it 21-21, then Carolina punted again, and things got worse very quickly, as fellow rookie Patrick Peterson returned said punt 89 yards for a touchdown to give Arizona a 28-21 lead with 7:45 left. Cam would get 2 more drives down 7 to do something. The first ended in another punt, and the final saw him move the ball 81 yards downfield just to turn it over on downs at the Arizona 6-yard line to seal the loss. Week 2 versus Green Bay, Cam got Carolina out to a 13-0 lead early in the second quarter, but Carolina would get shut out on their next 6 drives, committing 4 turnovers to help Green Bay take a 23-13 lead into the fourth. Despite having second and goal at Green Bay's 3-yard line, Carolina settled for a field goal to make it 23-16 with 10 minutes left. Surprisingly, their defense got a stop, giving Cam the ball back, and he quickly moved Carolina down the field again, setting up 3rd and 1 at Green Bay's 3, but Cam took a sack before turning over on downs on 4th down at the Green Bay 6 with 3:22 left, much like in Week 1. A few plays later, Aaron Rodgers would hit deceptively athletic Jordy Nelson for an 84-yard touchdown dagger. Week 4 at Chicago. After notching his first career NFL win and game-winning drive in Week 3 over future Hall of Fame quarterback Blaine Gabbert, Cam had an up-and-down day versus the Bears. He threw for 374 yards and accounted for 3 touchdowns, but also threw a pick 6. His special teams gave up a punt return touchdown to Devin Hester, who has fewer career touchdowns than Ted Ginn Jr., by the way. It wasn't all Cam's fault, though. Carolina had a 34-yard field goal blocked in the third quarter, down 4. Then Carolina missed a 52-yard field goal early in the fourth, down 24-23. Cam would have 2 more drives down 27-23 with a chance to take the lead, but did nothing on both of them, as Chicago eventually won 34-29. Week 5 versus New Orleans. Cam ran for a score at the end of the third to make it 23-20 New Orleans entering the fourth. He then led a touchdown drive capped off by a touchdown pass to former underground Miami rapper Greg Olsen to make it 27-23 Carolina with 12:40 left. Cam had a chance to put the game away with the ball up 27-23, but punted. Breeze then led the Saints on a long go-ahead touchdown drive to go up 30-27 with a minute left. Cam had one final drive with 3 timeouts to get into field goal range, but was unable to do so, turning it over on downs as Carolina fell to 1-4. Week 6 at Atlanta. This would be the first time that Cam actually looked like a rookie quarterback quarterback, throwing 3 interceptions for a putrid 44.6 rating. However, his 14-yard touchdown run in the third gave Carolina a 17-14 lead entering the fourth. Atlanta tied it at 17, but Carolina punted it away, as Atlanta then took a 24-17 lead on a clutch touchdown drive by Matt Ryan. Down 7 with 7 minutes left, Cam threw a bad interception, and Atlanta used the great field position to score another touchdown to go up 31-17, dropping Carolina to 1-5. Week 8 versus Minnesota. Against a bad Minnesota team at home in Week 8, Cam threw 3 touchdowns, but he also lost 2 fumbles, both of which set up Minnesota in great field position that they turned into 2 touchdowns. Sam Ponder's not as handsome as me husband and legendary father figure Adrian Peterson teamed up to put Minnesota ahead 24-21 with 3 minutes left. On his final drive, Cam had a clutch 44-yard bomb to Brandon LaFell on 4th and 15 and got the ball to the Minnesota 13 with 29 seconds left, but his kicker Olindo Mare pulled a Cundiff on him, missing the chip shot and dropping Carolina to 2-6. The missed field goal is not Cam's fault, but 2 bad fumbles and producing just 7 points on the previous 5 drives before it are. Week 11 versus Detroit. Carolina came out on fire, taking a 24-7 lead early in the second and a 27-14 lead into halftime. But once again, Carolina's offense slowed down in the second half. Detroit roared back to take a 28-27 lead into the fourth quarter. Down 1 early in the fourth, Cam went 3 and out. Detroit then went down and scored a tutter to go up 35-27, but then Cam finally led a clutch touchdown drive and 2-point conversion to tie the game at 35 with 5 minutes left. Detroit scored another touchdown to go up 7 with 2:36 left, and Cam threw a brutal interception, which Detroit immediately turned into another touchdown to seal the 49-35 loss for Carolina. Finally, Week 14 versus Atlanta. Looking to avenge their Week 6 loss, Carolina once again started fast, taking a 23-7 halftime lead, but again, Cam's offense dried up in the second half, producing 0 points on their last 8 drives, including 2 interceptions from Cam. Meanwhile, Matt Ryan threw back-to-back touchdowns to rookie Julio Jones to take a 24-23 lead early in the fourth. The teams exchanged punts, and Cam finally got Carolina moving, but again, his kicker pulled a Cundiff on him, missing a 36-yard go-ahead field goal with 5 minutes left. 2 plays later, Ryan threw a 75-yard touchdown to Julio to go up 31-23. With his last chance, Cam got Carolina down to the Atlanta 27 before eventually turning it over on downs to drop Carolina to 4-9. Of Carolina's 23 points, 2 were from a safety and 7 were off of a 74-yard touchdown run by D'Angelo Williams. So Cam only put up 14 points really against a mediocre defense. Disappointing. I'm not going to call a rookie quarterback who put up historic numbers with terrible defensive support and bad clutch kicking a choker, but I do believe it's fair to say Cam left a lot to be desired with his performance in crunch time as a rookie. There were opportunities to be had, and Cam did not capitalize on them as much as he should have. 2012. Key stat: in the first quarter of games in 2012, Cam threw 8 touchdowns and no interceptions for a stellar 111.4 passer rating. However, over the final 3 quarters of games, he threw for just 11 touchdowns to 12 interceptions for a 79.2 rating. Expectations were high, no offense to Josh Gordon, for Cam after his exciting rookie year, and while he saw slight increases in efficiency in many stats, he didn't take the monster leap many people expected. Carolina's defense improved from 31st to 21st in points allowed per drive, but the offense fell from 5th to 11th in points per drive. Cam cut his turnovers down from 19 to 15, but his touchdowns also dropped from 35 to 27. Like his rookie season, Carolina got off to a terrible 2-8 start before rallying to finish 7-9. Also like his rookie season, many of those losses, 7 to be exact, were extremely winnable games. How much was Cam to blame for another season of many close losses? Let's find out. Week 1 at Tampa Bay. Cam's 2012 season opener was one to forget. Despite a brutal first 3 quarters that saw Carolina put up just 7 points on 7 drives, including 2 Cam interceptions, he had the ball early in the fourth, down 13-7 with a chance to take the lead, but ended up punting. Tampa kicked a field goal to make it a 2-score game on the next drive, and Carolina eventually lost 16-10. Cam's defense played well enough to win, he just didn't show up. Week 4 at Atlanta. A highly entertaining game that saw both quarterbacks play at a high level. Trailing 24-14 late in the third, Cam ran one in to make it 24-21 Atlanta entering the fourth. In the fourth, Cam would get 4 drives. The first, down 3, ended in a punt. The second was an impressive 88-yard drive capped off by a 36-yard touchdown pass to put Carolina up 28-24 with 8 minutes left. After Atlanta hit a field goal, Cam had 2 drives up 1 with a chance to expand the lead and put the game away, but Carolina punted both times. Starting at his own 1-yard line with a minute left, Matt Ryan drove Atlanta 77 yards to set up the 40-yard game-winning field goal to give Atlanta a 30-28 win to drop Carolina to 1-3. Week 5 versus Seattle. A brutal performance by Mr. Newton. Carolina's offense did absolutely nothing for 3 quarters, relying on a pick 6 for their only touchdown. Down 13-10 with the ball to start the fourth quarter, Carolina punted. Seattle expanded the lead to 16-10 with 10 minutes left, and Cam finally put together a drive, getting his team a 1st and goal at Seattle's 6, but a few failed runs and a a 5-yard pass on third down set up a 4th and 1 at Seattle's 1, and Cam badly underthrew an open teammate. Seattle then drained the clock and took a safety with 59 seconds left to make it 16-12 with a minute left. Cam's final drive ended quickly as he was strip sacked to end the game and dropped Carolina to 1-4. Week 7 versus Dallas. For the second straight week, Carolina's offense was non-existent through 3 quarters, putting up just 7 points on 7 drives, including a red zone interception from Cam. But Cam came alive on his first fourth quarter drive, leading a 75-yard touchdown drive to go up 14-13 with 11:38 left, but it was just a flash in the pan. Carolina had another drive up 1, but punted. Dallas took a 16-14 lead on a field goal with 3:25 left, but Cam failed to get Carolina into field goal range, turning it over on downs. Dallas added another field goal to go up 19-14 with a minute left, and Cam's last Hail Mary drive came up empty, dropping Carolina to 1-5. Week 8 at Chicago. There are so many similarities between this game and the 2014 NFC Championship game. Unfortunately for Cam and Carolina, they were the Packers in this situation. They led most of the game, but despite having a 19-7 lead in the fourth quarter, they should have been up way more, having settled for several field goals. Sound familiar? In the fourth, Cam had the ball up 19-7, but punted. Chicago cut the lead to 19-14 with 7 minutes left, and then Cam threw a brutal pick 6, and all of a sudden, Chicago had a 20-19 lead. Sound familiar? Cam drove Carolina inside Chicago's 30, but the drive stalled out, and they had to settle for a field goal to go up 22-20 with 2:27 left. Like Rodgers in that fateful NFC Championship game, Cam never touched the ball again after his last field goal drive, as Smoke and Jay Cutler drove the Bears 55 yards to set up the game-winning 41-yard field goal to give Chicago the 23-22 win to drop Carolina to 1-6. Week 11 versus Tampa. Thanks largely to a dominant performance by Carolina's defense, they had a 14-10 lead entering the fourth quarter. That lead grew to 21-10 with 6 minutes left after Cam found Brandon LaFell for a 29-yard touchdown. Tampa responded with a field goal to make it 21-13 with 4 minutes left. Up 8 with the ball, Cam drained the clock to a minute left before Carolina punted it away. But future Vikings legend Josh Freeman drove Tampa 80 yards without any timeouts for a touchdown and 2-point conversion to send the game into overtime. Tampa won the toss and again marched 80 yards downfield for a touchdown to win the game 27-21. Week 13 at Kansas City. This game should not have been played because it happened just one day after the Javon Belcher incident. You can Google it. There weren't many possessions throughout the game as both teams excelled on 3rd and 4th downs. Cam, for his part, was excellent most of the game, but his defense was atrocious, allowing Brady Quinn to look like Patrick Mahomes. Entering the 4th down 24-14, Cam threw his 3rd touchdown of the day to cut it 24-21 with 13:26 left. He would get the ball back down 3 with 11 minutes left, but punted. After a Kansas City field goal made it 27-21, Cam had another shot to take the lead with 5 minutes left, but went 3 and out. Carolina got the ball back with 18 seconds left at their own 14, but time ran out, dropping them to 3-9. Does Cam deserve blame for the 2012 Panthers not being better? Some of it, yes. In both Tampa losses, the Bears loss, the Cowboys loss, and the Seahawks loss, his offense averaged just 12.6 points per game. Those were 5 extremely winnable games. It's simply not acceptable, and Cam, in my opinion, deserves the most blame for them. The other 2 close losses to Atlanta and Kansas City, I'll say Cam's defense let him down, but even in those 2 games, he had multiple chances late to seal the game and failed. If it feels like I'm only picking on the close losses Cam had through 2 seasons and not mentioning close wins, it's because in only 2 of Cam's 13 career wins to that point did his opponent either tie the game or have a lead in the fourth quarter, hence why he had just 2 game-winning drives through 2 seasons. However, that would change in year 3. 2013. Key stat: in the first half of games, Cam had 12 touchdowns to 10 turnovers and an 80 passer rating on the season. But in the second half of games, he put up 18 touchdowns to just 4 turnovers with a 99.6 passer rating. Heading into year 3, nobody doubted Cam's talent, but with just a 13-19 record, he was finally under some pressure to start winning. And after a dreadful 1-3 start, the Panthers finished a stellar 12-4 thanks to several clutch Cam performances and the second-ranked defense, led by humble, hardworking, daughter-dating Defensive Player of the Year winner Luke Kuechly. Cam led a ball control offense, but still contributed 30 total touchdowns to 14 turnovers on the season, a healthy 2.14-to-1 ratio. He also recorded 4 game-winning drives, which was double what he had his first 2 years combined. Timely plays offensively and stellar defense did enough to earn Carolina a first-round bye, but let's take a deeper look at all the close wins and losses Carolina had to get that first-round bye. Week 1 versus Seattle. Nobody would know it at the time, but this game decided the 1 seed in the NFC. The 2013 Seahawks were a legendary defense, so only putting up 7 points against them is somewhat understandable, I guess, but this was still an extremely winnable game. Cam had a 7-6 lead and the ball entering the fourth, but punted it away. Russell Wilson threw a 43-yard go-ahead touchdown to put Seattle up 5 with 10 minutes left, and Cam drove Carolina down the field with the help of some flags, but his game-winning drive was stopped by a DeAngelo Williams fumble inside Seattle's 10, and Carolina never touched the ball again in this disappointing 12-7 loss. Week 2 at Buffalo. A 14-14 game entering the fourth, fourth, Carolina blew several chances to end this game quickly. Their first fourth quarter drive started on Buffalo's 16 thanks to an E.J. Manuel fumble, but they settled for a field goal after having first and goal at the 4. A Manuel interception then set up Carolina at Buffalo's 26, up 17-14, but again they settled for a field goal to go up 20-14. A Buffalo field goal made it 20-17 with 7 minutes left, and Carolina's ground game got them to 4th and 1 at Buffalo's 21 with 1:42 left. Carolina head coach Ron Rivera played a conservative, settling for a field goal to go up 23-17 with 1:38 left instead of trusting his offense to gain 1 yard to seal the game. E.J. Manuel, with the help of defensive pass interference penalty, drove Buffalo down the field, throwing the game-winning touchdown with 6 seconds left to win 24-23 and drop Carolina to 0-2. The media criticism following this loss, along with the team's eventual 1-3 start, ended up lighting a fire under Rivera, creating his alter ego Riverboat Ron, a much more aggressive decision-maker. With Rivera's job in jeopardy, Cam and the team went on an absolute tear, winning their next 4 games by an average of 20.5 points per game to improve to 5-3. Then came one of the most clutch stretches of Cam's career, with help from his defense. Cam's third career game-winning drive wasn't super impressive. It was a 9-yard field goal drive to put Carolina up 10-9 on the road versus a loaded 49ers team. San Francisco's offense would get 3 more drives down 1 to try and win, but Carolina's defense stifled Colin Kaepernick each time by playing the national anthem over the loudspeakers to improve to 6-3. Cam's 4th career game-winning drive would come the next week in a memorable Monday Night Football battle against Tom Brady. It would end up being one of the best games of Cam's career, as he threw for 3 touchdowns and ran for 62 yards, scoring 24 points on just 6 drives, including the game-winning 83-yard drive finished off by a 25-yard touchdown pass to Ted Ginn Jr. to go up 24-20 with 59 seconds left. The game ended with a controversial no defensive pass interference call on Luke Kuechly against Rob Gronkowski to improve Carolina's record to 7-3. Tough shit, Brady fans. You got the tuck rule, so it evens out. Up next, a trip to Miami versus the Dolphins, and for the 3rd straight week, Cam recorded a game-winning drive, the 5th of his career. It was a pretty brutal day for Cam until the final drive. He had a rushing touchdown to make it 16-13 Miami midway through the 3rd, but thanks to stellar defensive support, he would get 4 more drives down 3 in the 4th to try and win the game. The first 3 all ended in punts, but the 4th and final drive saw Cam put on a clutch masterpiece, converting a 4th and 10, then converting 2 third downs before finding 3-legged mammal Greg Olsen for the game-winning touchdown to go up 4 with 46 seconds left to improve to 8-3. 2 blowout wins and a blowout loss followed the next 3 weeks to put Carolina at 10-4 with 2 games left. The 10-4 Panthers faced the fellow 10-4 division rival Saints in their high-powered offense in a game that was a surprising defensive slugfest. Drew Brees only produced 6 points on his first 10 drives, while Cam only mustered 10 points on his first 11 drives. Brees led New Orleans on a 97-yard touchdown drive to go up 13-10 with 6:37 left, but Carolina's next 2 drives down 3 both ended in punts. Thankfully for Cam, his defense bailed him out, giving him a 3rd chance down 3 with 55 seconds left, and he delivered, completing passes of 37 yards, 14 yards, and then 14 yards again on a touchdown pass to Dominic Hickson to go up 17-13 with 28 seconds left to bump Carolina's record to 11-4. In the season finale versus a bad Atlanta team, Cam was mediocre, producing just 14 points on 10 drives, including getting shut out in the 4th quarter, but luckily for him, he got a pick 6, and his defense held strong in the 4th to squeak out a 21-20 win to improve to 12-4 and earn a 1st round bye. The 2013 divisional round versus the 49ers. Cam's playoff debut at home in the divisional round versus a loaded and experienced 49ers team started off rocky. Down 3-0 before he ever touched the ball, Cam threw an interception on his first postseason drive ever, which led to another San Fran field goal to put them up 6-0 in the 1st. But Cam then drove Carolina to San Fran's 1-yard line where they had 2 chances to get across the goal line but failed. Despite this missed opportunity, Cam bounced back, finding Steve Smith for a 31-yard touchdown to put Carolina up 7-6. Carolina got the ball back up 1 and once again had 2 cracks at it from San Fran's 1-yard line but couldn't get it in, instead having to settle for a field goal to go up 10-6 with 5 minutes left in the half. Kaepernick finally woke up, leading San Fran 80 yards downfield and throwing a 1-yard touchdown pass to Vernon Davis with 14 seconds left to give San Fran a 13-10 halftime lead. Carolina went 3-and-out on their opening second half drive, and San Francisco once again drove 77 yards for a score, capped off by Kaepernick running it in himself, put San Fran up 20-10 midway through the 3rd. Cam would get Carolina to 1st and 10 at San Fran's 29 on his next drive before taking back-to-back sacks to push the team out of field goal range. San Fran would go on another 70-plus yard drive that ended in a field goal to go up 23-10 midway through the 4th, and on 1st and 10 from the San Francisco 28 with 4:34 left, Cam threw an interception that all but ended the game as San Francisco drained essentially all the remaining time to send Cam home a loser in his playoff debut. 2013 was a monster step in the right direction for Cam and the franchise. His improved performance late in games where he was mostly otherwise playing mediocre, while also being aided by a great great defense gave major Tom Brady vibes, but it's impossible to not be disappointed going one and done in the playoffs. The inability to get the ball in the end zone from San Fran's 1-yard line twice is inexcusable. Carolina scored 3 points on those 2 drives when they should have had 14, an 11-point swing. Instead of it being 23-10 San Fran late in the fourth, it should have been 23-21 San Fran with Cam driving to put Carolina ahead. Who knows? It's stuff like this that fascinates me and why I love researching old games. The margin for error is sismo. Much like 2013, 2014 would also be a year to remember for Cam, but not quite in the same way. 2014, key stat, in the first 3 quarters of games, Cam had 14 touchdowns and 15 turnovers with just a 74.1 passer rating. But in the fourth quarter and overtime, he had 9 touchdowns to 2 turnovers and a stellar 110.3 passer rating. 2014 would be the worst season of Cam's career thus far, both professionally and personally. He went a horrid 2-8-1 in his first 11 starts, and he literally almost died in a car accident in December. He had a 23 touchdown to 17 turnover ratio, the worst of his career to date. His offense finished just 17th in points per drive, also a career worst. Carolina's elite defense from 2013 regressed from 2nd to 21st in points allowed per drive. However, thanks to playing in a historically awful division, Carolina going 2-0 in the 2 games Cam missed, both against a 2-14 Tampa team, and Cam winning his final 3 starts of the regular season, he not only got into the playoffs, but had a home playoff game for the 2nd straight season, despite a 5-8-1 regular season record. As always, let's look closer at how a quarterback who went 5-8-1 made the playoffs, shall we? Cam missed the first game of the season, a 20-14 win over Tampa with a rib injury, but won his first start decisively over the Lions to improve Carolina to 2-0. Back-to-back blowout losses to the Steelers and Ravens followed, dropping Carolina to 2-2, and Cam's first close game of the season versus Chicago. Week 5 versus Chicago. Thanks to lackluster all-around play, including 2 turnovers from Cam, Carolina fell behind 21-7 early on, but were down just 3 entering the fourth. Cam's first 2 fourth-quarter drives down 3 both ended in punts, but thanks to turnovers by his defense on back-to-back drives to set him up deep in Chicago territory, he led a 6-yard game-tying field goal drive and then a 23-yard go-ahead touchdown drive capped off by a pass to G. Reg Olson to put Carolina up 31-24 with 2:23 left. Carolina's D held firm, shutting down Smoke and Jay Cutler one more time to improve to 3-2 and earn Cam his 7th career game-winning drive. Week 6 at Cincinnati, Carolina missed a 38-yard field goal to start the fourth that would have put them up 27-17. Cincinnati scored a tutter to tie it at 24. Cam led a touchdown drive right back to go up 31-24, but a 97-yard kickoff return by class act Pac-Man Jones set up a 3-yard Cincinnati touchdown run to make it 31-all with 4:36 left. Cam threw a bad interception, and Cincinnati kicked a field goal to go up 3 with 2:16 left, but then Cam led a field goal drive to send the game into overtime, tied at 34. Cincy went up 37-34 with a field goal. Then Cam got Carolina to 4th and 1 on Cincy's 18 with 2:24 left, but Riverboat Ron decided to kick the field goal. The game would end in a 37-37 tie after Cincy kicker Mike Nugent missed a 36-yard field goal as time expired. Despite leading a go-ahead drive and 2 game-tying drives in the fourth quarter and overtime, Cam left without a win or a game-winning drive, earning instead a hollow fourth quarter comeback. A blowout road loss to the Packers and 2014 NFL MVP Breitbart star dropped Carolina to 3-3-1, where we got to our next close game, Week 8 versus Seattle. The first 3 quarters saw the teams combine for just 12 points, 4 turnovers, 3 of which were in the red zone, and 0 touchdowns. Tied at 6, the teams exchanged punts to start the fourth. Then Cam got Carolina to 1st and 10 at Seattle's 29 before a sack forced Carolina to settle for a field goal to go up 9-6. Responsible deployer of charity funds, Russell Wilson then went to work, finding not old school Luke Wilson to put Seattle up 13-9 with 47 seconds left. Armed with 2 timeouts and 77 yards to go, Cam heroically led his team on a negative 15-yard drive to lose the game to fall to 3-4-1. Back-to-back blowout losses to the Saints and Eagles followed, dropping Carolina to 3-6-1, heading into a key divisional matchup. Week 11 versus Atlanta. Trailing 16-3 to start the fourth quarter, thanks in part to 2 Cam interceptions, Carolina punted on their first fourth quarter drive before getting the ball back and finally cutting the lead to 16-10 on a Cam touchdown pass to offensive lineman Kelvin Benjamin. After another quick stop, Cam put Carolina up 17-16 with a 47-yard strike to Philly Brown. But Matt Ryan responded with a long field goal drive to give Atlanta a 19-17 lead with 2 minutes left. Cam would set up his kicker Graham Gano with a 46-yard go-ahead field goal with 1:26 left, but the Graham cracker missed it. Somehow, Cam got the ball back to set up one last 63-yard field goal attempt to win, but it was blocked, dropping Carolina to 3-7-1. Here's what happened following Carolina's Week 12 bye. A blowout loss to Minnesota, a blowout win over New Orleans, a serious car accident involving Cam that almost killed him, a close win over Tampa without Cam to improve Carolina to 5-8-1. With no margin for error left to make the playoffs, Cam returned to face faced the Johnny Manziel-led Browns. Week 16 versus Cleveland. Thanks to his defense keeping him in the game despite a horrid first 3 quarters, Cam had a 10-6 lead entering the fourth, but after punting on his first fourth quarter drive, Cleveland took a 13-10 lead on an 81-yard touchdown pass by Brian Hoyer, who replaced Johnny Alcohol just before halftime when he left with a hamstring strain. Realizing that losing to the Browns would be the worst thing to happen to him over the last 2 weeks, Cam threw a go-ahead touchdown pass, but Carolina back on top 17-13 with 7 minutes left. Cleveland's last drive ended with a punt, and the combo of Cam and Jonathan Stewart drained the remaining clock to improve Carolina to 6-8-1 and set up a de facto playoff game on the road versus Atlanta. A 34-3 blowout win over Atlanta in Week 17 secured Carolina the NFC South and a home playoff game. They became only the second team ever at that point, along with the 2010 Seahawks, to make the playoffs with a losing record in a full season. Like the 2010 Seahawks, the 2014 Panthers won their first playoff game against a badly injured Cardinals team starting Ryan Lindley, arguably the worst quarterback in NFL history. Cam was just okay in his first playoff win, but his 2 third-quarter touchdown passes put the game out of reach to get Carolina to the divisional round for the second straight year. Only this time it would be on the road against the defending Super Bowl champion Seahawks. 2014 divisional round versus Seattle. Carolina overcame 2 Cam turnovers in the first quarter to hang in with the champs, trailing just 14-10 at halftime. But while Carolina gave up 0 points in the third, they only had 1 drive in the quarter, which ended in a punt. After a Seattle field goal in the first play of the fourth, Cam had a chance to make things interesting, but another punt, this time down 17-10, was followed by a Russ touchdown pass that gave Seattle a 24-10 lead. Still barely alive, Cam threw a touchdown on Carolina's next drive. Unfortunately, though, it was a 90-yard pick six to Cam Chancellor, putting Seattle up 21 points with 6 minutes left, effectively ending the game. Cam would pad his stats with 1 more garbage time touchdown pass to reach the final score of 31-17 Seattle. What does the 2014 season say about Cam Newton? I'm not really sure. It was a lost year for both him and the Panthers, yet despite it all, they finished in the same exact spot as 2013 when they went 12-4 and had the second best defense in the league. If anything, Cam's 2014 season reminds us that football is a crazy sport and there are so many things out of a quarterback's control that go into how they are remembered. Speaking of which, what Cam did in 2015 will certainly be remembered forever. 2015. Key stat, as you can see here, it was a tale of 2 seasons for Cam. In games 1 through 7 and Super Bowl 50, he had 15 touchdowns to 13 turnovers and a mediocre at best adjusted net yards per attempt. But his monstrous 11-game stretch from games 8 to 18 are what won him the MVP and got Carolina to the Super Bowl, with a 35-5 touchdown to turnover ratio and a stellar 8.54 adjusted net yards per attempt. When Cam Newton is discussed, inevitably, his 2015 season will be brought up very quickly. He won NFL MVP, led Carolina to a 17-1 start, made the Super Bowl, accounted for a staggering 45 touchdowns to 14 turnovers, started the dabbing trend, made a bunch of racists angry, and all in all was the biggest star in the biggest sport in North America. The 2015 Panthers were a machine. First in points per drive thanks to both Cam and a top 5 defense that led the league in turnovers, many of which set up the 6'5", 250-pound Newton with short field. Cam was also terrific late in close games, which is why Carolina began 7-0 despite his subpar numbers overall to that point. Then Cam went on the best 11-game stretch of his career, playing as well as pretty much any quarterback ever has, putting up 35 touchdowns, just 5 turnovers, while Carolina averaged 35.4 points per game and won their games by an average of 16.2 points. Unfortunately, once Carolina got on the biggest stage in Super Bowl 50, Cam ran into an all-time great defense playing at its best and fell just short of winning a ring. That doesn't mean we can't look back at all of Cam's key moments from 2015, though. Carolina raced out to a 4-0 start, but defeating Blake Bortles, Ryan Mallett, Luke McCown, and rookie Jameis Winston wasn't really moving anybody. The first real test came in Week 6 against the 2-time defending NFC champs on the road. Week 6 at Seattle. Seattle jumped out to a 27 lead midway through the third and a 23-14 lead early in the fourth. Cam had been lackluster all game and punted on his first fourth quarter possession, but he got the ball back down 9 with 8 minutes left and went to work, leading Carolina 80 yards to make it 23-20, got the ball back and led another 80-yard game-winning touchdown drive, capped off by a beautiful throw to third leg Greg to advance to 5-0. Week 8 versus Indianapolis. After defeating first ballot Hall of Fame bank robber Sam Bradford in Philly to move to 6-0, we got our only Cam Newton-Andrew Luck matchup ever, a sloppy rain fest on Monday Night Football. Neither quarterback put up great stats, but Cam threw 2 touchdowns to put Carolina up 23-6 early in the fourth. Then, Luck suddenly came alive, leading Indy to 17 straight points to send the game into overtime. Luck actually led them to 20 straight points if you include his go-ahead field goal drive in overtime, but Cam responded with a field goal drive of his own to tie it. Then Luck finally cooled off from his hot streak, throwing a bad interception to set up Cam in great field position. Cam's 10th career game-winning drive wasn't the stuff of legend, it was only 5 yards, but it still counts, as Graham Gano kicked the game-winning 52-yard field goal to improve Carolina to 7-0. Carolina then went 4-0 with an average margin of victory of 18 points per game over its next 4 games to move to 11-0. Cam was on fire, putting up 12 touchdowns to just 1 turnover and a stellar 110.7 rating. But he was about to get another test from national anthem enjoyer Drew Brees on the road. Week 13 at New Orleans. One of the most exciting games ever. Cam and Brees were trading blows for 3 quarters, with Carolina taking a 27-24 edge into the 4th. Brees threw a touchdown to go up 31-27, but Cam responded right away with his 4th touchdown pass of the day to make it 34-31. The teams exchanged punts before Brees led a touchdown drive to put New Orleans up 38-34 with 5:27 left. Cam converted a clutch 4th down just before the 2-minute warning and eventually found Jericho Cotchery for the game-winning touchdown, his 5th of the day, to go up 41-38 with 1:10 left. Carolina's defense forced a turnover on downs to seal the win and Cam's 11th career game-winning drive to advance to 12-0. A 38-0 blowout win over the Falcons followed to move Carolina to 13-0 and put Cam as the MVP frontrunner. But Carolina's next game would be, let's just say, interesting. Week 15 versus the Giants. Odell Beckham Jr. and Josh Norman literally tried to kill each other the entire game and somehow did not get ejected. In the meantime, Cam continued his MVP play, throwing 5 touchdowns in the first 2.5 quarters to put Carolina ahead 35-7. But then Carolina's offense went cold, and Eli channeled some of his 2007 and 2011 playoff magic to rip off 28 unanswered points to tie the game at 35 with 1:51 left. But Cam regrouped himself and calmly led Carolina downfield into field goal range, never once even reaching 3rd down, to set up Graham Gano's game-winning 43-yard field goal to advance to 14-0. Week 16 at Atlanta. A shitty Atlanta defense had somehow found a way to stop Cam Newton just weeks after he destroyed them 38-0. Atlanta took a 14-10 lead into the 4th thanks to an amazing 70-yard touchdown catch by Julio Jones. Cam would have his chances to keep Carolina's perfect season alive, but his first drive ended in a punt. His second cut it to 14-13 on a field goal, but Atlanta responded with a field goal to make it 17-13. Cam then turned it over on downs, but got the ball back one last time down 7 with 1:30 left and no timeouts, but unfortunately, perfection remained elusive, as Cam got strip sacked by future Vegas Vipers legend Vic Beasley to seal the loss. Cam would bounce back with a dominant 4-touchdown day and a 38-10 win over Tampa to finish the season at 15-1 and seal the NFL MVP, but the real season was about to begin. The 2015 divisional round versus Seattle. For the second straight year, Cam faced the Seahawks in the divisional round, although this time it was at home. This was a tale of 2 games. Carolina scored on all of its first 4 drives, putting up 3 touchdowns and a field goal, plus a pick 6 from scrappy gym rat Luke Kuechly to take a dominating 31-0 lead at halftime. But the second half was all Seattle. Recovery water sponsor Russell Wilson came alive to throw 3 pretty insane touchdown passes, while Carolina's offense punted on each of its 5 second-half drives. Seattle got it down to 31-24 with 1:16 left, but Carolina recovered the onside kick to survive and advance to the NFC Championship game. The 2015 NFC Championship game versus Arizona. Much like the week before, Carolina would dominate the first half, taking a 24-7 lead into halftime. Unlike the week before, Carolina would also dominate the second half, putting up one of the most impressive performances in recent NFL history, destroying a very good Arizona team 49-15. Without question, this was the high point of Cam's career, as he accounted for 382 yards and 4 total touchdowns while getting contributions from his defense in large. They forced 7 turnovers, including 6 from fellow MVP candidate Carson Palmer, including another pick 6 from Luke Kuechly. Now standing at 17-1, Carolina looked like the inevitable Super Bowl 50 champs. But as they say, that's why they play the games. Super Bowl 50 versus Denver. Entering the big game as 5-point favorites against a Broncos team led by Peyton Manning's corpse, everybody assumed a comfortable Carolina win. But everybody underestimated just how amazing Denver's defense was, even after they had just shut down Tom Brady 2 weeks earlier. The first major blow to Carolina came on the second drive, when Cam was strip sacked and Denver scored off the fumble to go up 10-0. Carolina would respond a few drives later with a 73-yard touchdown drive to make it 10-7, but a field goal that would have made it 13-10 Denver early in the third was missed by Graham Gano. Denver then extended their lead to 16-7 entering the fourth. Carolina eventually cut it to 16-10 with 10:26 left, and although this game is remembered mostly as a blowout because of its final score and how boring it was, Cam actually had 2 drives down 6 in the fourth quarter with a chance to win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it was not to be. His first such drive ended in a punt, and the second ended with him being strip sacked again, both times by Von Miller, inside Carolina's 10-yard line, giving Denver the ball at Carolina's 4, up 6 with 4 minutes left. A few plays later, Denver went up 24-10 on a touchdown run and 2-point conversion. Cam's final numbers were terrible. He accounted for no touchdowns and 3 turnovers with a 55.4 passer rating, took 6 sacks for 64 yards lost, and led his team to just 10 points on 16 drives. However, his offensive line got destroyed all day, and his receivers also dropped some passes. As time has gone on, his performance has become a little more understandable considering his opponent. He got a lot of flack for not diving on a fumble, but I always thought that was overblown, and he most likely couldn't gotten the ball anyway. A dream season ended abruptly in a nightmare. Cam would never come close to putting up his 2015 numbers again, and he would never come close to making another Super Bowl. His title window opened and shut before anybody realized it. Still, his career wasn't over yet. 2016, key stat. Since 1950, among all individual seasons where a quarterback had at least 500 pass attempts, 2016 Cam ranks 387th out of 392 in completion percentage. It was back to reality, no offense to Eminem, for Cam and the Panthers in 2016, going from 15-1 and Super Bowl runner-up to 6-10 and no playoffs. The offense dropped from 1st to 20th in points per drive, while the defense fell from 5th to 15th in points allowed per drive. Cam individually fell off dramatically, going from 45 touchdowns to just 24 in 2016. It was also a trying year off the field, as he missed a game with a concussion and was briefly benched for the start of a game by Ron Rivera because of a quote-unquote dress code violation. How dare he? While completion percentage is not a great stat, it's still a category where a quarterback wants to be respectable in. Cam completed just 52.9% of his passes overall, and a horrid 46.8% over his last 7 games. Like always, there were close games along the way. Let's check them out. Week 1 at Denver. Unlike Super Bowl 50, this Panthers-Broncos matchup wouldn't be so boring or one-sided, but it did end the same. Cam looked like his MVP self in the first half, putting up 2 touchdowns to give Carolina a 17-7 halftime lead, but after a scoreless third quarter, Denver trimmed it to 17-14 early in the fourth. On his first fourth quarter drive, Cam threw an interception to set up another Denver touchdown to make it 21-17 Denver. A field goal cut it to 21-20, and Cam got the ball back and set up Graham Gano with a 50-yard game-winning field goal attempt at the very end, but it missed, dropping Carolina to 0-1 and setting a bad omen for the rest of the season. Carolina bounced back with a blowout home win versus San Fran in Week 2, but an embarrassing home loss to Minnesota in Week 3, followed by a Week 4 road loss to Atlanta, which saw Cam get concussed early in the fourth, caused him to miss a Week 5 home loss on Monday Night Football to Tampa, dropping Carolina to 1-4. Week 6 at New Orleans. The Saints raced out to a 21-0 lead early before Carolina weathered the storm to make it 24-10 at halftime. It would be 31-17 New Orleans entering the fourth before a defensive pass interference penalty and a Drew Brees interception helped set up back-to-back Carolina touchdowns to make it 31-30 after a missed extra point. Brees threw another touchdown to put New Orleans up 8 with 6 minutes left, but Cam then led another DPI-aided drive and ran in for a score, his third touchdown of the day, and a successful 2-point conversion to tie the game at 38 with 3:04 left. But Brees, who threw for 465 yards and 4 touchdowns on the day, led the Saints into field goal range where they kicked the game-winning 52-yard field goal, dropped Carolina to 1-5. Carolina had their bye week and then reeled off 2 straight wins versus Arizona and a bad Rams team to improve to 3-5. Week 10 versus Kansas City. Carolina hosted the 6-2 Chiefs and were on fire early, taking a 17-3 lead into halftime thanks to 2 touchdowns by Cam, but the second half was a nightmare for the Panthers. Their only third quarter drive was a 20-play drive that somehow ended in a punt, but they still held their 17-3 lead entering the fourth. A KC field goal made it 17-6, and then Cam threw a terrible pick 6 to make it 17-14. On his third fourth quarter drive, Carolina punted and KC tied the game. The teams then traded punts again before Kelvin Benjamin fumbled deep in Panthers territory with 20 seconds left, setting up KC with an easy game-winning 37-yard field goal to drop Carolina to 3-6. Week 12 at Oakland. After barely hanging on to beat New Orleans at home in Week 11, Carolina faced a surprising 8-2 Raiders team on the road. Oakland took a 24-7 lead into halftime thanks in part to a brutal pick 6 by Cam just before halftime, but Cam would bounce back, leading Carolina to 25 unanswered points, including touchdown passes of 88 and 44 yards to give them a 32-24 lead early in the fourth. Future first ballot Jets Hall of Fame quarterback Derek Carr answered with a touchdown and 2-point conversion of his own to tie it at 32. Cam would then get 2 more drives, the first with the game tied, but it ended in a punt. His last drive would come trailing 35-32 with 1:45 left. He quickly got the ball to the Oakland 44-yard line, but ended up being strip-sacked on 4th down by Khalil Mack to seal the loss. Cam's dress code violation game came in Week 13 on the road at Seattle, a game which Carolina lost 40-7. The Panthers then ripped off 2 wins in a row to keep their slim playoff hopes alive, but a decisive loss to the Falcons in Week 16 eliminated them. Week 17 versus Tampa. A meaningless game that went down to the last play. Cam was terrible, throwing 3 picks, including a pick 6 in the first half, but the game was still tied at 10 entering the fourth. Cam had 2 fourth-quarter drives, the first ending with a missed 36-yard field goal, leading Tampa to take a 17-10 lead on a Jameis touchdown pass, before Cam answered on his last drive of the season with a touchdown pass to Kelvin Benjamin with 17 seconds left. With nothing to lose, Carolina went for 2, but Cam's pass fell incomplete, sealing the loss and the Panthers' final record at 6-10. 2016 was so bad for Cam that some began wondering whether his 2015 season was a fluke. Either way, 2017 was set up to be a major year in Cam's career. 2017, key stat. In 4 games versus the Patriots, Lions, Packers, and Dolphins, Cam had a stellar 15 touchdown to 1 turnover ratio and an unbelievable 131.2 rating and adjusted net yards per attempt number. But the other 12 games games of the season, he was not good. 13 touchdowns to 16 turnovers, a 62.9 rating, and a putrid adjusted net yards per attempt. Nevertheless, 2017 saw the Panthers bounce back from the lows of 2016, finishing 11-5 and making a return to the playoffs. But there was nothing spectacular about this team. They were simply above average and nowhere near dominant like the 2015 version. Despite the improvement in the win-loss column, individually, Cam was much closer to 2016 than he was 2015, putting up 28 touchdowns to 17 turnovers. He had 4 dominant games, as I said, while being pretty bad in the other 12, relying heavily on his defense, special teams, and running backs to do most of the work. Let's look at the key games of Cam's 2017 season. Carolina began the year 2-0 thanks to their defense holding the 49ers and Bills to a combined 6 points. Then, an ugly home loss to the Saints in Week 3 had people questioning Cam's status as a top quarterback. Week 4 at New England. Facing the defending champs on the road and a quarterback with almost as many MVPs as Aaron Rodgers, Cam had a tough task. But he was up to the challenge. Taking a 23-16 lead into the fourth, Carolina expanded that lead to 30-16 on a Cam touchdown run, his 4th of the day. But again, this is Tom Brady, so of course he then led New England to back-to-back touchdown drives to tie the game at 30 with 3 minutes left. After benefiting from a ticky-tack flag on 3rd down that almost certainly would have seen Brady lead a game-winning drive, Cam instead drove Carolina into field goal range as Graham Gano hit the game-winning 48-yard field goal to push Carolina to 3-1. Week 6 versus Philly. Following one of the best games of his career in Week 5 versus Detroit to get Carolina to 4-1, Cam hosted extremely respected duck hunter Carson Wentz and the 4-1 Eagles on Thursday Night Football. It was a gritty game with Philly taking a 21-16 lead into the fourth, where they extended it to 28-16 on the first play on a Wentz touchdown pass. Cam responded right back with a touchdown pass to rookie gym rat sex idol Christian McCaffrey to make it 28-23. Cam would end up getting 2 more drives down 5 with a chance to win in the quarter, but the first ended with a terrible interception and the last ended on downs around midfield. Week 7 saw a brutal 17-3 road loss to Chicago, where Cam had both a fumble 6 and a pick 6, while Chicago threw just 7 times. But Carolina then reeled off 4 straight wins thanks largely to clutch defensive and special teams plays to get to 8-3 before suffering their second blowout loss of the season to the Saints in Week 13. Week 14 versus Minnesota. Minnesota had come out of nowhere to become one of the best teams in 2017, entering this game at 10-2, but Carolina still had some pride. Despite another subpar outing from Cam, Carolina took a 24-13 lead into the fourth quarter, but Carolina's first 2 fourth-quarter drives up 11 both ended in punts. Minnesota responded with a touchdown and 2-point conversion to make it 24-21. Then Cam threw an interception, which set up Minnesota at Carolina's 6, but the defense stood strong, forcing Minnesota to settle for a negative 3-yard field goal drive, tied the game at 24 with 3 minutes left. Cam would redeem himself, channeling Steve Young's famous 1988 run against Minnesota, breaking off a 62-yard run himself. A few plays later, Carolina punched it in to go up 31-24 and held on for their second most impressive win of the year behind New England. Week 16 versus Tampa. In Week 15, Carolina spoiled Aaron Rodgers' return from a collarbone injury with a 4-touchdown day by Cam to move to 10-4, setting up this clash with a bad Bucs team. But outside of a 103-yard kickoff return touchdown in the second quarter, Cam's offense produced just 9 points on 6 drives. Tampa took a 19-15 lead on a field goal to start the fourth, and then Carolina had to punt on its first fourth-quarter drive after Cam took a bad sack in field goal range. A missed Tampa field goal ensued, and Cam ended up running in the game-winning score with 39 seconds left, nearly fumbling it away in the process to move Carolina to 11-4. Carolina blew a chance in Week 17 to win the NFC South on the road in Atlanta thanks to a brutal 3-interception day by Cam, and thus had to go on the road in the wildcard round. 2017 wildcard versus New Orleans. An 80-yard bomb from Drew Brees to the best bad wide receiver in NFL history, Ted Ginn Jr., gave the Saints an early 7-0 lead. Cam and the offense had no problem moving the ball, but they had 4 straight drives end in field goals, including 2 that ended inside New Orleans' 11-yard line. Meanwhile, the Saints took a commanding 24-12 lead into the fourth. Cam finally got Carolina into the end zone with a touchdown to an anonymous former member of the 7th floor crew to make it 24-19. Carolina got the ball back down 5, but after taking a sack and clear concussion on 2nd down, Cam was removed from the game on 3rd and 17 for Derek Anderson, who, shockingly, didn't convert. New Orleans would score a touchdown to go up 12 with 5:08 left, but after consulting with Tua Tagovailoa's doctors, Cam came back into the game and fired a 56-yard touchdown to Christian McCaffrey, who ran to the end zone like a firefighter running into a burning building to save children, making it 31-26 with 4 minutes left. The Saints had 4th and 2 around midfield at the 2-minute warning, and Sean Payton went for the kill, but Brees shockingly threw an interception, giving Carolina a golden chance to steal a win. Cam quickly got Carolina Carolina to first and 10 at New Orleans' 21-yard line with 46 seconds left, but a couple incompletions, an intentional grounding, and a sack on fourth down ended Carolina's season. Nobody would know it at the time, but this would be the last playoff game of Cam Newton's career. He was only 28 years old, a three-time Pro Bowler and former league MVP who had led his team to the playoffs in 4 of the previous 5 seasons. Life is cruel. 2018. Key stat: over the first 8 games, Cam was back to his MVP self, putting up 18 touchdowns to 4 turnovers with a stellar passer rating and adjusted net yards per attempt, while the Panthers went 6-2. But over his last 6 games, just 9 touchdowns to 9 turnovers, a mediocre rating, and a bad adjusted net yards per attempt saw the Panthers go 0-6. Despite some of the best stats of Cam's career, he was really bad in the clutch all season, failing to close out games. But that's nothing compared to the shoulder issues which reemerged in 2018 that would short-circuit Cam's career and eventually end his days as an effective player in the NFL. Let's get to the key games. Week 2 at Atlanta. Following a 16-8 win in Week 1 against a team that hasn't made a conference championship game since 1995, Cam and the boys traveled south, taking a 10-3 lead early on before the Falcons ripped off 21 unanswered to take a 24-10 lead into the fourth. Cam cut it to 24-17 with a touchdown pass, but Matt Ryan, yes, Matt Ryan, responded with his second rushing touchdown and 4th overall touchdown of the day to put the Falcons back up 14. Cam threw an interception, but his defense gave him the ball back, and then Cam completed a 51-yard touchdown to make it 31-24 with 2:20 left. Cam got the ball back one more time with a minute 48 left, but his Hail Mary attempt barely fell incomplete at the buzzer to seal the loss. Cam's 4-touchdown performance over the lowly Bengals in Week 3 to move to 3-1 was followed by a Week 4 bye, setting up Week 5 versus the Giants, which was a highly entertaining back-and-forth battle which saw a muffed punt turn into a touchdown and a wide receiver throwing a 57-yard touchdown to overshadow inconsistent play by both quarterbacks early on. The Panthers took a 20-16 lead into the fourth and quickly expanded it to 27-16 on a Cam touchdown pass. Then Cam and Eli exchanged interceptions before Eli found the best number 2 receiver ever, Odell Beckham Jr., to make it 27-24 Panthers. Cam led a long field goal drive to make it 30-24, but Eli responded with a clutch touchdown drive to go up 31-30 with a minute 8 left. Cam then moved Carolina 30 yards to set up a prayer 63-yard game-winning field goal attempt by Graham Gano, which he made to give Carolina a 33-31 win and 3-1 record. Week 6 at Washington. Washington jumped out to an early 17-0 lead thanks to 2 DJ Moore fumbles and a Cam interception, but Carolina slowly clawed back into the game, making it 17-9 entering the fourth. A Washington field goal made it 20-9, but Cam led a touchdown and 2-point conversion drive to make it 20-17. Washington added a field goal to make it 23-17 with 3 minutes left, giving Cam one more chance to steal the win. He had Carolina moving downfield, getting it to 2nd and 5 at Washington's 16-yard line with 54 seconds left, but his final 3 passes fell incomplete, sending Carolina to a disappointing loss. Week 7 at Philadelphia. For the 3rd straight year, Cam would face the defending Super Bowl champs on the road, and it was ugly to start, as Carolina punted on each of its first 5 drives, falling behind 17-0 entering the fourth. But thankfully for Cam, Carson Wentz was on the other side, not Nick Foles. Cam then led 3 straight touchdown drives of 80, 87, and 69 yards, respectively, to give Carolina a shocking 21-17 lead with a minute 22 left. Thanks to a 48-yard DPI penalty, Wentz had 3rd and 2 at Carolina's 14-yard line with 37 seconds left, but the drive ended with a strip sack by Julius Peppers, the best former UNC basketball player I can think of, to win the game for the 4-2 Cats. 2 impressive wins over Baltimore and Tampa followed to push Carolina to 6-2, but a blowout 52-21 loss to Pittsburgh in Week 10 had devastating long-term ramifications for the Panthers franchise beyond just that game. Cam messed up his shoulder on a sack by TJ Watt, and the franchise still, all these years later, is reeling. Week 11 at Detroit. This game came down to Graham Gano fucking Carolina out of 4 points on a missed 34-yard field goal and a missed extra point. Down 13-7 to start the fourth, Cam led a 92-yard touchdown drive to tie it at 13, but Gano was distracted by some boobs in the crowd and shanked the extra point. Matthew Stafford, who I still can't believe actually won a Super Bowl, took the lead right back with a long touchdown drive to go back up 20-13. The teams exchanged punts, setting up Cam with a final opportunity, which he capitalized on, leading a 75-yard touchdown drive to make it 20-19 Lions with a minute 7 left. With no faith in Gano, Carolina went for 2, but it was no good. The onside kick failed, and Carolina dropped to 6-4. Week 12 versus Seattle. Despite the game beginning with Cam getting stuffed at the 2-yard line on Carolina's first drive, the Panthers took a 10-3 lead midway through the second quarter, but then their defense took the rest of the day off, allowing scores on each of their last 5 drives. Regardless, Carolina took a 20-17 lead into the fourth. Seattle tied it at 20, then Cam led a go-ahead touchdown drive, but Seattle roared right back to tie with a touchdown of their own. Carolina's last drive ended with Graham Gano missing a go-ahead 52-yard field goal with a minute 45 left, his last ever kick with the Panthers. Russell Wilson then used all his nano bubbles to complete a 43-yard pass to set up the Seahawks for a chip shot field goal to win 30-27 and drop Carolina to 6-5. Week 13 at Tampa. This game finally saw Cam's shoulder issues catch up with him. 2 first-half interceptions put Carolina into a 17-7 halftime hole, but he would rebound in the third to make it 24-17 Tampa entering the fourth. He would get 4 chances to tie the game in the fourth quarter, but his first 2 tries both ended in interceptions on Tampa's side of the field. His third ended on turnover on downs, and his last ended on a Hail Mary attempt, which was nowhere close to the end zone. Shout out to Jalen Hurts, dropping Carolina to 6-6. Week 14 at Cleveland. Taking a 20-17 lead into the fourth, Carolina quickly fell behind 23-20 after a Nick Chubb touchdown run. Much like the previous week, Cam would get several chances to win the game in the fourth, but failed each time. The first try, down 3, ended with a punt. Cleveland added a field goal to make it 26-20, and Cam drove them 72 yards, getting second and goal at Cleveland's 3-yard line, but a run for no gain and 2 incompletions followed. Cam would get the ball back with a minute left, but then threw an interception to end the game, sealing Carolina's 5th straight loss. Week 15 versus New Orleans. Cam's final game of the season would come on Monday Night Football against the dominant Saints team, although Carolina's defense surprisingly held New Orleans to just 6 points on 7 drives through 3 quarters, giving Carolina a slim 7-6 lead entering the fourth, where the Saints finally scored a touchdown to go up 12-7. However, Carolina got a rare pick 2 on the 2-point conversion to make it 12-9 with 2 minutes left. Just as it was with the previous 2 games, Cam had multiple opportunities to win at the end, but his first drive ended in a punt, and the last ended with a turnover on downs to seal the loss to end Carolina's season. 2019. Key stat: games played 2, games missed 14. That basically says it all about 2019 for Cam. Returning from off-season shoulder surgery, he started the first 2 games, both close losses where he had chances to win late in crunch time but failed. He was then shut down for the season with a Lisfranc fracture. Carolina then won 5 of their first 6 games without him before crashing back to earth to finish 5-11. Ron Rivera was fired after falling to 5-7, and at season's end, Cam was cut once Carolina couldn't find any trade partners for him, officially ending the 9-year Rivera-Newton era in Charlotte. 2020. Key stat: in 2 games versus the Jets, Cam put up 6 touchdowns and no turnovers with a stellar passer rating and a perfect 2-0 record. But in his 13 other starts, he had just 14 touchdowns to 11 turnovers, a terrible passer rating, and a bad 5-8 record. After saying goodbye in the offseason to a quarterback who lost 2 Super Bowls to Eli Manning, Patriots head coach / sociopathic MILF hunter Bill Belichick signed the next best thing in free agency, a quarterback who lost a Super Bowl to Peyton Manning. Jokes aside, Cam's 1 year with the Patriots was a confusing and mostly depressing ride for everyone involved. A quarterback who was a shell of what he once was leading the worst team his franchise had put out in 20 years. He ran for 12 touchdowns but threw just 8 in 15 starts. That number dropped to 5 in 13 starts if you remove the 2 games versus the Jets. Despite Cam's obvious limitations as a passer, the Patriots went 7-8 in his 15 starts and were only a few plays away from potentially winning double-digit games. Week 2 at Seattle. After winning his Patriots debut versus the Dolphins, Cam continued to look good against the Seahawks, although the same couldn't be said about his defense, as the Seahawks took a 28-17 lead into the fourth. Cam threw his first touchdown as a Patriot to cut it to 28-23, but missed the 2-point conversion. He got the ball back down 5, but punted it away, then watched Russ Wilson throw his 5th touchdown of the game to go up 35-23. Cam responded with an impressive touchdown drive to make it 35-30 with 2 minutes left, before getting the ball back down 5 with a minute 42 left. After several impressive throws and runs, he had first and goal from Seattle's 1-yard line with 3 seconds left. Time for one more play, but his quarterback sneak failed, dropping the Patriots to 1-1 despite his 444 total yards and 3 scores. After handily defeating the Raiders in Week 3, Cam missed a Week 4 showdown versus the defending champs because of COVID, a game the Patriots lost, which would drop them to 2-2. Week 6 versus Denver. Fresh off of a Week 5 bye, Cam returned against a bad Drew Lock-led Broncos team, but he and the Patriots offense looked nothing like the first 3 weeks before he got COVID. Denver took an 18-3 lead into the fourth, all points coming off of field goals, while Cam had thrown 2 interceptions. But Cam finally got the Patriots into the end zone to make it 18-9, but failed the 2-point conversion. Locke threw an interception deep in Denver territory, but New England had to settle for a field goal to make it 18-12. Locke then threw another terrible interception, giving Cam the ball down 6 with 3 minutes left. He would get New England to 1st and 10 at Denver's 24-yard line with a minute 17 left, but the drive then stalled out as his 4th and 10 throw fell incomplete to complete a brutal loss. Week 8 at Buffalo. After throwing 3 interceptions in an embarrassing 33-6 loss at home to San Fran in Week 7, Cam faced an up-and-coming Bills team led by young Josh Allen on the road. Patriots hung tough, though, as it was a 14-14 game after 3. Allen gave Buffalo a 21-14 lead on a touchdown run, but Cam responded with a touchdown run of his own to make it 21-21. Buffalo added a field goal to go up 24-21 with 4 minutes left, but Cam had the Patriots moving again, having 1st and 10 at Buffalo's 19 with 42 seconds left. At worst, the game looked headed for overtime, but then Cam committed his only lost fumble of the season at a brutal time, dropping the Patriots to 2-5. Week 9 at the Jets. Despite how terrible the Patriots season was, they were still juggernauts compared to the the 0-8 Jets, or so people thought. Joe Flacco looked like 2012 playoff Flacco for 3 quarters, giving the Jets a 27-17 lead after 3. A long Patriots drive ended in a field goal. Flacco threw a bad interception, and then Cam ran for a score to tie it at 27. The Jets went 3 and out, and Cam made enough plays to set up Nick Folk for the game-winning 51-yard field goal to temporarily save New England's season. Week 11 at Houston. Following a huge upset win at home versus Baltimore in Week 10, New England traveled to Houston looking to get back to 500 against a bad Texans team led by dishonorable discharge. Both teams' offenses looked sharp through 3 as Houston led 24-17. The teams exchanged field goals to make it 27-20 with 4 minutes left. Cam then moved New England to Houston's 30-yard line, but the drive stalled and turned it over on downs. The game would then end on a failed Hail Mary to drop New England to 4-6. Week 12 versus Arizona. Thanks to great special teams and defense, New England was able to overcome a horrid Cam performance to take a 17-10 lead into the 4th. The Cardinals tied the game at 17 with 8 minutes left, and then Cam threw a horrible interception, nearly costing the Patriots the game, as Arizona missed a go-ahead 45-yard field goal with 2 minutes left. But on the Patriots' final drive, Cam finally made a good play, a 14-yard run on 3rd and 13, with 15 yards added on due to a flag to set up Nick Folk's game-winning 50-yard field goal to move the Patriots to 5-6. New England destroyed the Chargers 45-0 in Week 13 to get back to 500 and in the playoff hunt, but that momentum was completely destroyed in a 24-3 loss on Monday Night Football versus the Rams in Week 14. Week 15 at Miami. Sitting at 6-7 with no margin for error, the Patriots defense came to play early on, carrying another lackluster game from the offense to give them a 9-7 lead entering the 4th. But the dam finally broke in the 4th as Miami took a 15-9 lead. Cam converted a 3rd and 15 on New England's next drive, but ended up having to settle for a field goal to make it 15-12. Miami then drove 75 yards for a touchdown to go up 10 with 3 minutes left, and the Patriots' final drive ended with Cam being sacked on 4th down, dropping them to 6-8 and eliminating them from the playoffs for the first time since 2008. Week 17 versus the Jets. A 38-9 ass kicking on Monday Night Football at home to the Bills dropped the Patriots to 6-9 and rendered this Week 17 game versus the 2-13 Jets useless. Cam sure picked a great time to have his best game as a Patriot, throwing for 3 touchdowns and adding a 4th as a receiver. Yes, you heard that right. He also technically was credited with the game-winning drive since it was a 14-14 game entering the 4th, the 20th and final game-winning drive of his career. Obviously not satisfied with Cam's performance, the Pats drafted Mac Jones in the 1st round in 2021. Despite this, they re-signed Cam to a 1-year deal, but it was fool's gold, as he ended up getting cut in late August. 2021. Key stat: in his first start, Cam had 3 touchdowns and no turnovers for a stellar 120.5 rating, but in his last 4 starts, he had just 2 touchdowns to 6 turnovers and a horrible 44.5 rating. After being cut in late August, Cam was out of work until November when his old team came calling. His first game back was as a backup in a win versus the Cardinals. He ran and threw for a touchdown on his first 2 plays of the game even. His first start came the week after at home versus Washington, a game where he played pretty well in, combining for 3 touchdowns before failing in the clutch at the very end to lose 27-21. He would start 4 more games, all losses, putting up horrid numbers before finally being benched for good in Week 17. His final career start was in a blowout loss to Tom Brady's Buccaneers. In his final career game, he saw the field for 1 play, recording no stats in a blowout loss to, you guessed it, Tom Brady's Buccaneers. He was not re-signed in the offseason. What do the stats say? Now that we reviewed Cam's career season by season in detail, let's get to some of the numbers. As you can see, statistically, Cam was never among the elite passers in the league outside of 2015. In fact, most of the time he was just average at best. But then again, Cam's value wasn't solely tied just to his passing. Cam's offenses were a mixed bag. They were mostly average to slightly above average in both points and yards per drive. Even in his famous 2015 season, he finished first in points per drive, but just 17th in yards per drive, showing that he benefited massively from short fields set up by his defense, something he had no control over. Cam had 2 elite defenses, 3 slightly above average to average defenses, a couple below average defenses, and 2 outright terrible defenses. All in all, it balanced out to be about average for his career. Cam had 4 years of great starting field position offensively, and unsurprisingly, 3 of those 4 years were playoff seasons. Defensively, there seems to be less correlation between field position and team success. Cam's offensive ranks in points per drive and yards per drive were almost the same in playoff and non-playoff years, while his defenses were definitively better in playoff years than non-playoff years. However, Cam's 2014 season where he made the playoffs with a losing team might affect these numbers, so what happens if you remove that year? As quiet as it's kept, despite a winning career record, Cam only had 3 winning seasons in 9 years as a starter. Once you remove the fluke 2014 playoff season, you can see just how much better across the board his 3 best seasons were compared to his other 6 in every category, especially in terms of defensive support. While it doesn't really mean anything, I thought it was fascinating Cam went 0-13 in his last 13 starts with Carolina. Now we get to Cam as a runner, which was his calling card that separated him from other quarterbacks with mediocre passing stats. He has by far the most rushing touchdowns of any quarterback ever with 75, but was that because he was truly better at running or him vulturing touchdowns away from his running backs? Just from his own career timeline, 2011 to 2021, Cam's average touchdown run was 6.23 yards, well below that of the average touchdown run of non-quarterbacks at 10.16 yards, which is not surprising. But what is somewhat surprising is how his touchdown runs were also shorter on average than other quarterback touchdown runs during this time. Is it significant enough to mean anything? You can decide for yourself. How does Cam stack up historically against the greatest running quarterbacks who retired after the 70 NFL-AFL merger? See for yourself. The higher and higher you set the career touchdown run qualifier at, the worse Cam becomes in average touchdown run distance. You can draw your own conclusion. I will say, being 6'5" and 250 pounds with great athleticism at quarterback is rare, so I can understand why Cam was used around the goal line more than other quarterbacks would be, but I can't help but feel like if the other quarterbacks who had a ton of rushing touchdowns in their careers tried to run as often in the red zone as Cam did, that they could have had much more rushing touchdowns as well. The real question is, did Cam's physical advantage translate to better offenses than the best quarterbacks of his era? Let's see. Despite the historic amount of touchdowns Cam ran for, his offenses actually performed worse on average in producing points and yards on a per drive basis, and had worse efficiency producing touchdowns in the red zone than the 5 no-doubt Hall of Fame quarterbacks of his era that I listed above him. You might say it doesn't look like a huge difference in final rankings, but remember this, Cam only started 9 seasons, whereas the other quarterbacks, besides Mahomes of course, all started at least 13 seasons. Rodgers with 13, Peyton with 17, Breeze with 19, and Brady with 21. Consistently producing more efficient offenses despite a much larger sample size is not easy. Mahomes has only started 5 seasons, but he's an alien and an exception to every rule. I still expect his average rankings to drop slightly the longer he plays. You might say it's unfair to compare Cam to the best of his era, but if you're going to call him a dominant quarterback, you must compare him to the best of his era. Cam's defensive support was, on average, at least better or about equal to all the Hall of Fame quarterbacks I listed, of course, besides Tom Brady. We talked about passing and rushing individually, but how does Cam stack up to his peers at scoring touchdowns and limiting turnovers if you combine the two? Well, about how you'd expect. Again, this is not an end-all be-all stat, and it's only using the years Cam played, so there's no era adjustment needed. Just as a passer, Cam lags behind many, which kinda undersells him, but adding in his rushing touchdowns, he gets into that Hall of Very Good tier, but comfortably below the best of the best, which feels a lot more appropriate. Final assessment. My overall issue with Cam discourse is this. If he was truly as dominant as his supporters say, he would have been able to put up the same individual stats he did while leading much better offenses in terms of points and yards per drive every year, not just 1 or 2 years. To put it bluntly, Cam is overrated, since I believe his rushing touchdowns are heavily inflated from vulturing the majority of them away from his running back, so they aren't nearly as impactful as they appeared to be at face value. Cam was by no means a bad quarterback though, at least before injuries ruined his last few years. He's the perfect example of a Hall of Very Good quarterback. I would put him in the same class all the time as guys like Phillip Rivers, Andrew Luck, Boomer Esiason, Donovan McNabb, Randall Cunningham, Carson Palmer, Steve McNair, Matthew Stafford, Tony Romo, Trent Green, and well, I could go on, but you get the point. I finally end the video with this. I appreciate that Cam played the game with joy and wasn't some boring, lifeless robot like a Tom Brady or Sidney Crosby. The NFL and sports in general would be better if more stars had his personality. Do most people even care that guys like Ken Griffey Jr. and Barry Sanders never won titles? No. Why? Because how they made us feel is what we remember most about them. So yeah, Cam never won a Super Bowl and he won't make the Hall of Fame. But I think back to something he said before he was drafted. He wanted to be an entertainer and an icon, and he absolutely achieved that goal. He did something very few athletes, like Griffey Jr. and Sanders, have ever done, which is remind us why we love sports. And in the grand scheme of things, isn't that more important than watching boring check-down merchants win a bunch of rings that nobody cares about?